Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled An Introduction to EFT, Emotionally Focused Therapy with Couples. My name is Annette Johns, and I'm the Associate Director of Policy and Practice with the Newfoundland and Labrador College of Social Workers. I will be the moderator for this continuing professional education session this morning. It is always so wonderful when we can come together to learn from our social work colleagues and enhance our knowledge of therapeutic approaches in social work. This webinar presentation will be approximately 70 to 75 minutes, followed by a question and answer period. Throughout the presentation, I do encourage you to type in your questions using the question mark icon at any time throughout the presentation, and I'll begin asking the questions during the question and answer period. Only the presenters and I can see the questions, so just want to let people know that as well. So on that note, I now want to introduce our speaker, Rosa Ernst. Rosa is a registered social worker, a certified EFT therapist, and EFT supervisor in training. Rosa has been working with families in a variety of contexts for over 15 years and has been working with couples using an EFT framework since 2018. Rosa works full-time for Family Justice Services, providing mediation services to separating parents, and has an evening private practice which is primarily focused on couples and relationships. Rosa believes in the healing power of relationships and the value of emotionally focused approach in helping people improve the most important relationships in their lives. Rosa, I'm really looking forward to your presentation, and I'm now going to pass the virtual podium over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Annette, and I'm really happy to be able to do this today. I'm going to turn off my camera for now and just focus on the slides, and then I'll turn it on again at the end for the questions. So as Annette mentioned, I am a registered social worker and certified EFT therapist, so emotionally focused therapist, and also in the process of becoming a supervisor, an EFT supervisor. So I'm currently a supervisor in training. And today's presentation is really going to be a sort of tops of trees overview of emotionally focused therapy with couples. This is a really big topic that I could talk about all day or over several days. So this will be really just a sort of brief overview. And certainly I'm guessing that some participants today will already have some training or experience with EFT. And for others, this might all be really new. So hopefully there's something in here for everyone. And if at the end you find this really interesting and you're interested in further training, I'll talk a little bit about options for that, if that's something that you're interested in exploring. So starting out, I guess I just want to give a little brief overview of what is emotionally focused therapy with couples. EFT is an attachment-based model of therapy that was developed for the purpose of working with couples and relationships. And when we say attachment-based, what we mean is that relationship problems are viewed through the lens of an attachment framework. So we're looking at relationship problems through the lens of there being two partners who are trying to get their attachment needs met in the relationship. And at times when those attachment needs are not being met or not being met in the way that feels needed, that relationship conflict arises from that space. So really taking the view that in order to address and resolve relationship problems, that we have to really view them through an attachment lens. There is more than one model of EFT. The one that I'm going to be talking about today is the one that was developed by Sue Johnson and was developed primarily for couples and relationship work. That is the model that I'm trained and certified in. And to my knowledge, it is the model that also has the biggest base of evidence-based research. So the biggest body of research that shows its efficacy for working with couples. In recent years, the model has also expanded to an approach for working with individuals and with families. But today I'm going to be focusing primarily on the couples piece, which is where I focus in my practice. And EFT is very much an experiential model of therapy rather than a cognitive model of therapy. So in EFT, the therapist is leading the couple or the clients into a different experience of relating to each other, rather than teaching the clients skills to go away and improve the relationship. So instead of being an educator or a teacher, the EFT therapist is really a leader of a different kind of interactive experience. So I have a diagram here of a negative cycle in a relationship, and the EFT approach of assessing a relationship challenges is always to find and identify the negative cycle in the relationship. And most relationships, even healthy ones, have some form of negative cycle. And the most common negative cycle that you will see show up in most relationships is what we call a pursue-withdraw cycle, where one partner leans towards more of a pursuing role and the other leans more towards a withdrawing role. And so this diagram presents a sort of classic pursue-withdraw cycle. And sometimes this can also be referred to as an attack-defend cycle. What you see on the top half of the diagram are the action tendencies of each partner. So on the left, the pursuing partner, you might see behaviors of being demanding, trying to convince. Often there's blaming, criticism. And those are the actions, those sort of pursuing actions that are present in the way that they are trying to reach and connect with their partner. And on the top side of the cycle, on the other side, what we often see is the withdrawing partner is being logical, trying to defend themselves, minimize some of the issues that are being put on the table, and that there's a sort of distancing effect that's happening as a result of those actions. And so those are the things that you might see presented when a couple comes into therapy. And what we're really interested in as EFT therapists is what's happening below that dotted line there in terms of the emotional experiences that are driving those behaviors. So on the left, you can see that for the pursuing partner, Often there's feelings of fear. I'm afraid that I don't matter. Oftentimes there's loneliness, sadness, feelings of disconnection and longing. And that's what's driving those demanding, convincing, critical behaviors at the top. And for the withdrawing partner, oftentimes there are feelings of shame or thoughts of, I'm never going to be enough, I'll never be good enough, I'm always going to fail. And that's what's driving the actions for the withdrawing partner on the top of the cycle. And the other really important part of understanding any negative cycle is that the more that the pursuing partner demands or convinces or criticizes, the more the withdrawing partner feels those feelings of shame and not enough. And then the more they are logical and defend, which then reinforces the pursuing partner's feeling of, I don't matter, I'm lonely, I can't reach you. And we get stuck in this sort of infinity loop where the actions on the top half of the cycle are reinforcing the feelings on the bottom, and both partners feel really disconnected and stuck and don't really know how to break out of that place. So like I said, this sort of pursue withdraw is the most common cycle that we will see in relationships. There are relationships that have slightly different cycles. Sometimes if one or both partners have a trauma history, you might see a more complex cycle where there are times when each partner will pursue and times when they withdraw. Some couples can also get stuck sometimes in an attack place where they're both attacking or pursuing at the same time. Usually that's short-lived. It's hard to stay there for any length of time. And sometimes we also see cycles where both partners are withdrawn. And usually in those situations, it's because there has been a pursue withdraw cycle for a while, and the pursuing partner is now given up and they're not trying anymore. So we see them both withdrawn, but there was a point at which there was attempts there for one partner to be trying to reach the other. So the negative cycle is really the starting point for working with a couple using EFT. So I do have a little animated video here, and I have a number of videos today because I find videos are always helpful for my learning, and it's a different way to see and experience a concept. These videos, just as a disclaimer, were all available on YouTube. So they are there for public use if you're wondering where they came from. And this particular one is a short animation overview of EFT and how EFT might approach a common relationship problem. This particular example, I find a little heteronormative. I think many of you will get what I mean by that when you watch it, but it is a nice example of a common issue and how EFT might approach it. So I'm going to play it now, and then I'll talk a little bit about it after.
Emotionally focused therapy, EFT, is an amazing approach to couple therapy that has been recognized by the American Psychological Association and other professional bodies as one of the most effective interventions for relationship problems. Meet Oliver and Sandra. They have been together for 12 years, and they have 2 young children. Oliver works long hours. Sandra feels that she's carrying more than her share of family responsibilities and that it prevents her from pursuing her own career. Sandra opens up to Oliver about this, but he immediately gets defensive and accuses her of being unfair. Sandra is hurt that he doesn't seem to care how she feels. Long gone are the days where he was enthusiastic about her professional success. Bringing it up leads nowhere. Whenever she voices her unhappiness, Oliver just erupts, gets loud, and they spend the next couple of hours not speaking to each other. Nowadays, any subject could lead to another fight. Work, the kids, how much time they spend with the grandparents, money, and even how they spend their free time. Research shows that what partners fight about is not simply the division of household work, how they raise their children, or spend their money. These things matter, of course. What really creates distress and makes partners protest is when they feel that the other one isn't available, responsive, and engaged. When we don't get the connection we long for, we act out in protest. For example, by nagging, getting loud, accusing, but also withdrawing and becoming silent. Over time, partners repeat these protest and defense moves over and over again until they become a kind of relationship dance that they both find themselves stuck in. Underneath, though, all either partner really wants is to be heard and connected safely to the other. The EFT therapist helps the couple to recognize their protest dance and access the underlying emotions that are driving their disagreements. When Oliver opens up to Sandra about the pressure he feels to keep his business afloat through difficult times and how this worry leaves him little room for other responsibilities, she's able to connect with that and respond to him in a way that makes him feel safe and understood. And the safer Oliver feels, the less reactive and the more responsive he becomes to Sandra. Together, they are able to change the steps to their relationship dance so that they both feel understood and supported.
So, as you can see from that video, what we're doing in EFT when a couple comes in with a presenting problem is we're really trying to put on our attachment goggles to see the problem through that attachment lens. So rather than approaching it at the level of content, which might be in that example, the female partner feeling like there isn't a fair distribution of household chores. We're not sort of getting sucked into the content of that discussion. We're trying to identify the unmet attachment needs that are being activated and facilitate a discussion about those experiences. So there's a lot of concepts in emotionally focused therapy, and I was trying to be selective about which ones I included in the webinar today, because you can sort of overload on the conceptual side, but the EFT steps and stages, I think, are really important to cover because this is the therapist's map for where they are in their process with a couple, what they have done so far, and where they still need to go. So this can be really helpful for an EFT therapist because there are so many things that come up in couple sessions and so many potential avenues that you can follow for discussions that having the map really helps to create focus for both the therapist and then for the clients to have a more organized experience of the couples therapy. So EFT is broken down into 3 stages. Stage 1 is the de-escalation stage, where we are helping a couple to de-escalate their negative cycle. Stage 2 is where we help a couple to, on a really fundamental level, restructure their attachment bonds. And this is where we take a couple from an insecure to a secure attachment. And then stage 3 is where we finally come back to the issues that the couples might have brought into a session and revisit them from this more connected place. When starting out with EFT couples therapy, sometimes there's a temptation to sort of try and rush through stage 1 in order to get to stage 2. The reality is that for most couples, the bulk of the work that they do in couples therapy is actually in stage 1. I think I've heard the statistic of 70% for most couples, 70% of the work that they do is in stage 1. So it's really important not to rush through this stage, because without real de-escalation of the cycle, it's not possible to do that more restorative healing work in stage 2. So within each stage, there are a number of steps. And I'm probably going to talk more about stage 1 today, just because, as I said, stage 1 is where we generally do the bulk of our work with couples. So the first step in stage 1 is assessing the couple and the presenting challenges that they're having, and building an alliance with each partner in the couple. And the building of the alliance is hugely important, because in order to get into the deeper work, it's really important that an EFT therapist have a strong therapeutic alliance with both partners. And so in this assessment and alliance building phase, normally we're looking at 3 sessions. An initial session where you see the couple together and get a little overview of what's bringing them to therapy. And then an individual session with each client. And this is a part that I never skip with a new couple, because there is always information that you are going to get differently by meeting with each partner individually than you're going to get with the 2 of them together. And the individual session also helps us to really connect with each partner's individual experience in the cycle, and to help them feel understood and connected with you as a therapist. And from an assessment perspective, you're trying to get a sort of initial picture of their negative cycle, but also in the assessment phase, you're trying to get a bit of an attachment history for both partners, so that you can understand what may have happened in their childhood or in earlier relationship experiences that may be fueling some of the conflict in the relationship. And then when you have them come back together after that assessment phase, you have a lot more information to help guide the next stage in the process. So after the assessment and alliance building, we're now sort of getting into the work of EFT stage 1. And this is where we're tracking the negative cycle. We're trying to help each partner identify and share their underlying emotions. And we're trying to reframe the problem that they are coming to therapy with in terms of the negative cycle and each partner's underlying attachment needs. And the goal at the end of stage 1 is that the partners feel like they are aligned with each other against the cycle. So instead of feeling like the other person is the enemy, that there's a reframing of the problem, that the cycle is the enemy and the two of them are in alliance against that cycle. And getting there oftentimes involves a lot of repetition of those steps 2, 3, and 4, of that tracking of the cycle, identifying the primary emotions, and reframing the problem. We often do this many, many times before we get to a place where the partners have a felt understanding of the cycle and feel like they are united against that cycle. Once we get to that stage, then we can move into stage 2. And that's where we're helping to facilitate a restorative interaction between the partners, where the attachment bonds actually get restructured and we go from what may have felt like an insecure attachment to a secure attachment. And in this stage, partners are identifying disowned aspects of themselves. They're sharing those with their partner, and they're asking from a really vulnerable place for their partner to meet their deepest attachment needs and longings. This is, a very profound part of the work. And like I said before, not necessarily something you're going to get to with every couple. But this is where the research shows that the real change events happen in that stage 2 of the therapy. So I'm going to move on to another video. This is a video of Sue Johnson there's a little clip of her doing an early stage intervention with a couple. So this is very typical of, I would say, early in the process. And I think you'll see that because the couple is still quite escalated. So I'll play the video and then I'll talk some more about it after.
I don't even need a who's right. I don't need to always be right. I would just like to be heard. I'm sorry. I hear that you feel that way, Rhea. I don't mean it to be like that. I love you. That would be okay. I don't need to hear that everything I said is right. I don't really agree with you, Rhea, but I hear what you're saying. I love you. And I don't know what to do now, so I got to go.
Right. So you help me. You're saying something incredibly powerful to this man. Okay. What you're saying to him, if I'm hearing you right, is you're saying to him, Matt, I don't need you to be perfect. I don't need to be right. I don't need you to be right.
I don't need you to fix it right this second.
I don't need you to fix it. It's okay for me to be disappointed sometimes. I just need to know that I'm important to you and you can reach for me. That's all I need to know.
I'm sorry you're upset, Rhea.
What I'm doing here is outlining and going and reflecting her attachment hurts, her attachment needs and longings, and listening to her. My assumption is validating her, reflecting her feelings, helps calm her down and be able to come more into the moment and stay with the present process.
I'm sorry you're upset, Rhea, and I love you.
Yeah, I'm
Something
sorry.
like
I
that.
care about how you feel.
Yes.
I care that you're hurt.
I don't mean it to sound like that.
And even though we're getting caught in this dreadful dance here, I love you. You need reassurance, yeah? That's what
Yes.
you're telling him?
Yes.
You're saying to him,
I love
in those
you,
moments,
even though it sounds like I don't love you, and even though I don't know what to do for you, and I can't really be this person, and I don't have anything for you, I do love you, and I don't
Even
wanna-
though you might be telling me, Matt, that you don't know how to be with me right now and that you're overwhelmed right now, what I need is somehow to know that you're still struggling to be with me. I matter to you and that you love me in spite of all this.
Because I don't really know that he loves me right now.
Right. I need reassurance. That's what we're telling him? Yeah?
I just don't know
Yeah.
that he
Can
loves
you-
me really.
Can you tell him that right now, even in those dreadful moments? This is the first time that I create an enactment, which is a essential part of EFT. What I've done is gone in and tried to distill her emotions, really focusing on the attachment meaning and get a more clear sense of her core emotions, her primary feelings underneath all this anger, and then ask her to give this emotional signal, this clearer emotional signal about these underlying feelings to her partner. Even in those dreadful moments, it would help me so much not to spiral down into despair, to know that even though we're caught in this dreadful clash of titans, that I still matter to you, that you love me. Can you tell him that? That's what I'm longing to know. That's what would fix it for me in that moment. Can you tell
It would
him
help
that,
me
really?
calm down. And it would help me stop trying to be right or to make my point to you if you could just
Reassure me.
somehow reassure me and tell me that you love me. Or make some gesture that would just,
Reach for me, yeah? If you reached for me?
anything would be nice to make me feel like you don't just have nothing for me.
Right.
I hear what you're saying. I hear that. My immediate reaction is nobody's doing that for me, and I'm putting forth one more effort. My finger is in the dam and the water is lapping over,
Yeah.
and I got to do one more thing.
So I like that video because I think that's pretty typical of early in the process when we're trying to distill and share one person's emotional experience, that for the other partner, they're also in so much pain that it can be difficult for them to create space for their partner's pain and experience. So that's really normal and common at this stage in the process. And I will be talking a little bit more about how to go about handling that and managing that in the process. I want to talk a little bit about the language of EFT, because when we're doing this type of work with a couple, there really is a process of learning to speak differently, learning to pace differently, learning to choose particular words at particular times. And this does happen gradually over time, the more that you train and immerse yourself in this model. But the most important, or one of the most important things that we need to learn as EFT therapists is to slow down. And that's slowing down our speech, but also trying to help the clients to slow down their experience so that we can access what's happening under the surface. Oftentimes, we're going from trigger to reaction so quickly that we're not really connecting with or paying attention to what that sort of pain is in that moment that's being triggered that needs to be talked about. And so one of the most important things that we can do as an EFT therapist is to help couples to slow down. There's also an acronym here, RISK, which is a part of how the EFT therapist talks with clients. And so the words here are repetition, imagery, simple, slow, soft, and using the client's words. And These are things that come with practice, but these are all ways that we can help a client to engage with their emotional experience rather than with the tangible issue that they may be bringing to the process. So what you'll see if you train more in EFT or if you watch a lot of EFT videos, there's a lot of repetition. So repetition is sometimes repeating back what the client has said. Repetition is sometimes going back around those steps in stage 1, going through steps 2, 3, and 4 over and over again to help that integrate differently. Imagery is a really important part of EFT because imagery is often a way for us to activate an awareness of an emotional experience. And in the video we just saw, I really liked the male partner's image of my fingers in the dam and the water's lapping over. And that's a really powerful image that if you repeat back or stay with for a little bit of time is going to help to access some of his underlying emotional experience. We also want to be simple as much as possible in the words that we use. So while there can be a lot of concepts and jargon in EFT, our job as therapists isn't to teach those concepts to clients, rather to use as simple language as possible to help them experience those concepts. Going slowly, as I mentioned before, softness, you'll hear in all the videos that I show today, the therapist often is very soft in how they're speaking and really trying to pick up on and reflect back the client's words. So if the client says, you know, I'm really frustrated, you're going to reflect back, you're frustrated. You know, you might want to be gently leading them towards a different emotional word, but you always want to reflect back the words they're using because then they feel like you're with them in that place. And there's more safety to explore some other meanings of that experience. And the last point here, the relentless empathy. This is a Rogerian concept that really is a central part of EFT, that as EFT therapists, we are always trying to practice that relentless empathy with both partners in a couple. And there are times when that is challenging. If we find ourselves challenged to feel empathy for both partners, oftentimes that's a good time to take a step back and try and establish what in us is being triggered by that and what sort of work we need to do to step back in an empathic way. So what you saw at the end of that last video was Sue Johnson setting up an enactment. And enactments are where we really have that experiential process in EFT. And the research shows that enactments are key to EFT having that therapeutic impact. So it's not enough to just have a partner explore and describe their emotional experience to us. They also have to then turn to their partner and share with their partner. And oftentimes starting out, it can feel awkward to ask a partner to turn and share in real time. it does get easier quite quickly when you start doing it regularly. And when I'm working with a couple, I aim for at least one enactment in every session. So in every session, there should be at least one time when one partner turns to the other and shares something of importance. And then as a therapist, our goal is to help them process that encounter and integrate that experience. In stage 1, enactments are usually about trying to talk about the underlying emotional experiences in the cycle. And then for the processing piece, we are trying to put that experience back into the cycle. And in stage 2, enactments are more so about the deeper attachment needs and longings. So asking for the attachment needs to be met. So I do have another video. I did just see there was a comment of someone saying the videos weren't playing. Annette, can we confirm that the videos are playing?
Yes, Rosa, the videos are playing.
Okay. There are a couple people who said they didn't see videos or slides. I don't know what that was in relation to. Okay, I'm just going to go on and play this at this point, and hopefully for most people, the videos and the slides are showing.
Some deep emotions here, and I'm trying not to give y'all an ugly cry here right now, but it's just.
There's no such thing as an ugly cry. Okay? I mean, that's those old voices long ago talking. That's not the truth.
No, it's not the truth. But however, it's really hard.
I believe it. It takes all sorts of courage. You are fighting the demons from long ago in your past.
My God, yes.
You are. That's right, you are. But the feelings that you are feeling, I mean, you love this woman very much.
Yes.
You guys have been together for over 30 years, okay? You love her very much. You could lose her, okay? You said earlier, terror.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. It's painful. Can you tell me just a little bit about the feelings that you're feeling right here, right now?
Well, because we are in the feeling mode right now.
Yeah.
And because of this situation that my wife is in, the terror is there. It's back. It's back, and it keeps stabbing me stabbing me and stabbing me till I at least let it out. And I refuse to give in to it. But as long as I keep pushing, right now it's just, I'm trying not to cry here on this set here. Yeah. Because this is the first time that I've actually opened up about my wife's illness to my wife and in front of my wife. Because normally we at home, kids are gone, grandbabies at home, I go in the other room or I go in the bathroom and I just do me. And what I mean by that is I go and I have that moment where all I can do is just sit either on my bed or in the bathroom and I just begin to I had an emotional breakdown the other day. Looking at a video, I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, at work. I'm like, why am I in tears? I said, okay, let me just turn the video off. That'll stop it.
And you know.
And it didn't.
Yeah.
It kept going. Everything, my emotions, ever since she was diagnosed, my emotions have been going crazy. And I'm like, okay, the Lord keeps saying to me, eventually you're going to let it out.
That's right.
Eventually you're going to have to let go.
But it is scary, and there's a reason why. It's a reason why this takes so much courage to feel your feelings. Could you share with Janetta, right here, right now, that how scary it is to talk about your emotions, just what you're doing now? Tell her about that fear.
Now that Chris's emotional experience is alive in the room, I am preparing for move 3 of the EFT Tango, which involves using an enactment to create an engaged encounter. In this situation, rather than asking Chris to share his emotions, I am asking him to share his fear of revealing his emotions, which is a way of making it safer for him to do so.
So in that particular example, I really love how the male partner in that couple really was right at the edge of his emotional experience there. So in that particular example, the emotions are right there. And the role of the therapist is to try and walk around in that for the client and help distill it a little bit more, distill, the piece that they're going to share, and then encourage them to turn and share with their partner. Sometimes the emotion is not sort of sitting on the surface in the same way. And in those situations, as therapists, we are listening for cues to the deeper emotional experiences. And then when we hear a cue or an entry point, we're trying to pause and slow down. So a client may have a story about a tangible issue that they're struggling with, and somewhere along the way they say, "Oh, I'm really exhausted," or "It's just too much," or something that gives an indication of a deeper emotional experience. And that's the point that we want to pause and explore more. And that's where we start to deepen that emotional experience so that we have something articulated that they can then share with their partner. So when we ask them to turn and share, it's usually because we've distilled some sort of important emotional experience that we want to then help them share. So we're staying with the partner long enough to distill that experience. And then we ask them, can you share? Can you turn and share that with your partner right now? And then there's a really important piece of processing with both of them. How was it to share? What's that like to turn and share with her right now? And what's it like to hear? What comes up for you when you hear him say that? And we're trying to do that processing piece so that we can summarize and integrate that experience. And if it's a positive encounter, so if they feel like they are understanding each other better or differently, then we're really trying to reinforce, look what you just did here. Here's this really important experience that you shared with your partner, and in this space right now, he heard you and he came towards you. So we're really reinforcing the fact that they have the ability to do this differently. Now, as we saw in some of the one of the previous videos, early in the process, it doesn't always go in this sort of neat and tidy way that we might hope it to. Oftentimes, both partners are coming to the process in a lot of pain. And so it makes it hard to create space for your partner's experience if you feel like space hasn't been created for yours. And so when we do enactments in the early stages of EFT, we're sort of expecting there's a good chance this isn't going to go the way that we might ideally want it to. Sometimes we have an experience where the partner says, like the male partner said in the previous video, my immediate reaction is, nobody's doing that for me. And so then we got to really validate that experience. Yes, it's really hard for you to take in what she's saying right now, because you're also in so much pain. You're saying, nobody's doing that for me. And that's also coming from a place of pain and suffering. So we're really trying to simultaneously hold and validate both partners' emotional experiences in that place. Another strategy sometimes when enactments don't go the way that we might hope is to, it's called slicing it thinner. So sometimes you might ask a partner to turn and share, and they might say, no, I don't think I can do that right now. Or I said it to already, I don't want to say it right now. And an approach to dealing with that oftentimes is to do what we actually saw the therapist in the last video do. Instead of sharing the feeling with her, can you share with her that it feels too hard to share the feeling? So we're still creating and facilitating an encounter. It's just that the thing that they're sharing is a little bit less vulnerable. It's too hard for me to share right now. It feels too difficult, rather than I'm in so much pain. And all the time when we're doing these enactments, we're looking for and trying to highlight each partner's attachment longings. So we're trying to identify, why is this so hard right now? Why is it so hard for you to turn and share? Why is it so hard for you to hear your partner in this space? And really validating that those things come from a real place that we as therapists are trying to help them understand and talk about. So I think this is my last video. And this video is a more reactive couple, or a couple in a more reactive space. And I wanted to show this just because this is often what we see, certainly in early stages of couples therapy. And the way that the therapist handles this is important, and I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end.
So another big challenge that couples therapists face is that the couple can often get highly escalated, reactive, having fights in the room quite vociferously, and especially inexperienced therapists really don't know what to do. Just how do you handle that?
Well, the first thing is to handle it, that the therapist needs to be able to take control, to interrupt and take control of the session, interrupt the argument.
How?
Usually these moments can give an opportunity to catch the cycle in the room. So calling it out, that's how one way is to call it out and to work with the present process. That's a very effective way to manage the reactivity. Having partners turn and talk to you. I'll say, look at me, talk to me. Any way to interrupt what's automatically going on as they get more and more escalated between each other can be very, very helpful.
Okay, so let's look at some examples of this. And first we're going to see some examples with John and Nydia. And this is a couple that is highly reactive, particularly in the earlier sessions. And you'll see Scott using a combination of techniques, interrupting and reflecting the process, for example.
Yeah, and he's also careful not to break alliance. He uses a lot of warmth. Sue often says empathy calms aggression, and you notice that here.
He tried to explain, but I was because I was trying to get everything in the car. I had like 3 bundles because we were going to run errands. So then
I was holding everything. You had a little bottle of water.
I went back into the house and got water because the bird was we left for the weekend And so the neighbor said that the bird was very thirsty on the weekend. I don't know nothing about birds, actually, but I thought it was a good idea to go get water, good water. And she said to put a little dish of water because they like to bathe. So when I got the little dish of water, I threw it out, and he saw me. He was just looking at me. And he had the bags that needed to go to the car. And I was just changing the water. Anyway, he saw me throwing the water, and then he says, "What are you doing? I just changed that." So he didn't know what was happening. And I said, "I changed the water." And I said, "You know what? You're assuming that I'm throwing away the food, and you're just looking at something to get upset, and you caught me." And then I just blew off. That's what happened.
See how she's judging me that I'm looking to catch her?
She's looking at me to see what
I'm waiting for.
I'm washing, I'm doing the clothes, I'm cleaning, I'm doing all this stuff, and he doesn't look at that. He looks that I'm throwing away the...
So let's slow down for a bit. Let's slow down, John. Okay.
Yeah, so... He's looking at me. He's just looking at me to see what if I'm laying.
Okay.
If I want to see the TV, I can't because he doesn't want to see the TV.
Stop.
So it's got to be when he wants things.
Stop. Hold on, you guys. This is what you do, huh?
Yeah, this
like
is what we do.
Talk over each other. Yeah, well, it's kind of like, my sense is that you guys just go until you leave, all right? But what ends up happening, but I want to slow it down for just a little bit, because this can be understood.
Can?
Yes, we can understand this. We can figure this out, and it's going to be really helpful once we do. Okay? How in the world?
I'm so patient.
Yeah, well, hold on a second here, because there's a whole nother level, I think, that you guys may be missing. In fact, I think you are missing. Okay. And part of that level has to do with the fact that both of you are scared to death. In many ways.
That why? Here we go.
All right, here we go again.
I know.
So there were a number of things that therapist was doing in that space with that couple. Firstly, his voice was really low, but he was really close to them and really present with them and with their experiences. And in that place where it feels so desperate for both of them, he's interrupting. He's saying, "Wait, let's stop. Let's slow this down. We need you to stop. This is what the two of you do. This is what it looks like when you get stuck in this place at home." And then he's saying to them, this can be understood. We can understand this differently and work through this differently. There's another whole level of things going on here. You're both terrified. And you can see with the two of them just sort of the deflating, like everything's sort of coming down out of their system when he steps in that way and lets them know we can figure this out together. And there's something else going on here that's important, and I'm going to help you figure it out. This is really important here. There's something we need to understand, and we're going to do it together. So that was a big piece that I really liked in that particular video. So I am getting closer to the end of what I wanted to talk about today. And as I said, I really tried to sort of pick a little bit of information on a range of topics that help to give a little overview of emotionally focused therapy with couples. There's much, much more to talk about in relation to all the things that I've mentioned today. So if you found this interesting and you are interested in further training, I would suggest going to the ICEFT website, so the International Center for Excellence in Emotionally Focused Therapy. And it's worth having there's lots of different trainings available, but it is worth having a think about, if you are going to pay for training, whether certification is something that you might be interested in at some stage. There are intro courses to EFT that you can purchase online that are, a more detailed overview than what I have given today, but they may not contribute towards certification if that's your goal. So I did want to just give a little overview of how to get to certification if that's something that you're interested in. And this is with the caveat that until very recently, the only way to get certified in EFT was through working with couples and doing a couple stream. And I understand that there are new certification streams coming out for individual therapy, so emotionally focused individual therapy and family therapy. But I believe that the couple stream isn't going to be the same as it has been. And so if that is the route that you're going to consider, the first step is an EFT externship, which is 4 days. The next step is a core skills training, which is 8 days. You then need a minimum of 8 hours of supervision. And then there's an application package. And then you can get to the certified therapist status. So I wanted to talk a little bit about supervision because that is a really key component in learning the emotionally focused therapy model. EFT supervision usually involves taping sessions with couples and then reviewing your tape with a supervisor. And when you get to the stage of applying for certification, you are sending in 2 tapes of your work with couples that are then assessed as part of your certification package. My experience has been that there isn't a big culture, I think, in this province for taping sessions. And so oftentimes that can feel like a difficult thing to attempt or a difficult subject to broach with clients. And I certainly found it difficult initially when I was at that stage. I have found that taping sessions is really valuable for myself as a therapist in terms of being able to watch back what I've done, and also really valuable in terms of getting, that really specific feedback on interventions that you may be doing in a session with a couple. And without that actual ability to view the session in real time, sometimes it's harder to really identify the areas that you need to keep working on. One of the ways that I have, talked to couples about taping sessions is that there is a benefit to them in that they are getting a second set of eyes on the work that I'm doing with them. So they have then a more experienced therapist who's giving me feedback and helping me make sure that I'm giving them the best possible service. And, it's not going to be for every couple to tape sessions. But for the couples that do, oftentimes they do find that that is a way of enhancing their experience of the service as well. So I think I'm pretty much at the end. I was trying to sort of time this as best I could, and I finished a little bit earlier than I was anticipating. Annette, did we want to try and do some questions now and see where we're at?
Yes, that's great. Thank you so much, Rosa. And we do have some questions that have come in. And I guess we can just start. And if any other questions that people have, please use the question mark widget to the left of your screen, because we do have some time. So if there's questions that you do want to ask, feel free to send them along. So one of our first questions that came in, Rosa, was around the enactment piece. And someone was just wondering if you could repeat some of that information regarding the enactment for stage 2.
Yeah, so enactments are something that you would be aiming to do really throughout the process of working with a couple. As you move from stage 1 to stage 2, the nature of the enactments will start to change, and the purpose of the enactments will start to change. So the purpose of the enactments in the earlier parts of the process are to help each partner to talk about their underlying emotional experience that is driving their actions in the cycle. And then once we facilitated that sharing, we're then trying to put that information back into the cycle. So they're understanding, I feel really afraid and alone, and that's why I criticize and blame. So we're sort of sharing the afraid and alone, and then we're also understanding that the afraid and alone is driving that criticizing and blaming. Whereas in stage 2, what we're doing is a little bit deeper. We're actually restructuring the attachment bond. So in stage 2, an enactment might be, here's this part of me that I've always been afraid was not okay and unlovable. And I'm going to share that part of me with you here in this space, even though it feels really scary and difficult. And the partner is going to respond that that part of you is okay. And then from that place, we're going to talk about the attachment longings and also the attachment fears. So they're usually sort of two sides of the same coin. And I'm just giving an example. Maybe the fear is you'll see this part of me and you'll walk away. And the longing maybe is to be fully seen and accepted, and to be able to fully reveal myself to you and know that I'm accepted by you in this space. So the enactments in stage 2 are much more, what we're doing is really restructuring the attachment bond to create a secure attachment between the partners.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We have another question that's come in. How do you find this works when there's been infidelity in the relationship?
Really good question. EFT, The research base in EFT is really quite extensive, and I would encourage you, if you're interested in research, to go and take a look at it. Infidelity, or what we call attachment injuries, EFT is definitely useful in those situations. And there are also specialized trainings that you can take in attachment injuries. So an infidelity would be considered an attachment injury. That's where there's been an injury in the relationship that then needs to be healed. There are other forms of attachment injuries too that show up and need to be worked through and addressed. Generally speaking, with infidelity, we're still following the same steps and stages. And at the infidelity issue or the attachment injury issue will show up in those early parts of the stages as steps and in that stage one. And so in stage one, we're putting that injury into the cycle. So how is this showing up now? Like oftentimes, if there's been an affair, there'll be a new relationship cycle, and then there was an old relationship cycle. So there might have been the old cycle that precipitated the affair or the infidelity, and now there's a new cycle that's come about as a result of the infidelity. So we're sort of looking at both of those cycles, and that sort of deeper healing work that needs to happen in order to heal from an infidelity happens after the de-escalation. So we still have to help couples to de-escalate before we can really heal the injury. But that doesn't mean that we ignore the presenting issue, because if a person has been cheated on, that's going to be very present in their mind, and that's going to be all that they want to talk about. So we're still, we're validating that. We're validating that that's where they are in the cycle right now. We're trying to understand the current cycle. We're trying to understand the previous cycle that led to the infidelity. We're still doing all of that de-escalation work so that we can get to a place of trying to actually heal that attachment wound.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. We did have another question that came in through the chat. And in terms of working with the crisis solution-based work, is this theory, or are there parts of this theory that could be useful in those kinds of situations where it might be a situation where you're asked to do couples work, but it has to be solution based?
Do you mean like short, like is it workable as a short-term model, or do you mean is it like, is the question about can it be used in a short-term way, or is the question about like does it have to be solution focused?
Mm-hmm. So maybe that person can clarify that and just clarify that, and we'll move on to another question while we're waiting for that clarification piece to come in. There's a question around another piece of training and whether you are familiar with or would recommend the Gottman Institute training.
I have a little bit of familiarity with it. I haven't trained in it myself. For me, what I know of Gottman and what I know of EFT is more, fits more with my approach and understanding. And again, I'm saying this as someone who hasn't trained in Gottman. So if I were to do the training, I might have a different perspective. My understanding of Gottman is that it tends towards being a more cognitive approach to couple therapy, in terms of like understanding problems on a more cognitive level, whereas EFT is more of that understanding on an emotional level. And so for me, the emotional piece, it feels more natural and is a better fit. But again, I say that as someone who hasn't trained in Gottman. So, I think it's for each therapist to find the modality that resonates most for them. I think and again, I like research-based models. So there is a lot of research on the efficacy of EFT. And I guess that's part of what I like about that as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So the person did get back and note that it was short term. So it's working with couples in the short term and more crisis or solution based approach.
So what I've heard said by trainers before, and I subscribe to this too, is some EFT is better than no EFT. So yes, if you're just doing steps 1 and 2 of the 9 steps of EFT, that has value. And so if I were in that context, that would be the approach I would be taking. And it's going to look a little bit different in a really short-term space than when you're working with couples in more long-term settings. But I often find, even in my initial session with the couple, just tracking the cycle, drawing their attention to the cycle, validating each person's experience in the cycle. Oftentimes, when the couple walks out of that first session, they feel really different than when they walked in. So I do think that there is value in that, even if we're not getting to those later stages in the process.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yep, we still have another couple questions and we still have a little bit more time. So if anyone else has a question, please use the question mark widget and send that in. So someone's wondering, is there a trainer in the EFT externship that you recommend, and is it available online?
So yes, since the pandemic, all of this is online now, which is great, because when I did my training, I had to travel for it. And as we all know, like, traveling and paying for training is, it's a big commitment. And so, especially where we are in Newfoundland and options are not here for a lot of these trainings. So yes, they're online. Would I recommend? I mean, I can share the names of the trainers that I did training with. I think, generally speaking, any of the externships are going to be, it probably makes more sense to pick one that works with your schedule, or that's happening at a time that works for you, more so than a specific trainer. It would be, because they're all going to, there are standards that they have in place for what the externship needs to look like. So that would probably be my response, is that look and see, where they're being offered, what the time zones are, and that sort of thing, to find the one that works best for you or your schedule. And some, I know that in the past there have been some out of Australia that are cheaper for people outside of the Australian region. So sometimes you might have to do it like at 5 o'clock in the morning, but you might, it might be cheaper than some of the others. So those are things to think about as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Are there any couples or relationships that would not be suitable for EFT?
This is a good question. The short answer is yes, but not many. So there are there are EFT therapists all over the world who specialize in dealing with, really difficult types of couple situations, and there are specialized trainings in a lot of those. Historically, the guidance was, if there was an active addiction, EFT might not be suitable. In certain situations where there has been violence, EFT might not be suitable. There are some situations where there has been violence where you can do EFT, and so that's very much about being able to assess whether you can sufficiently create safety in the process, in the room. And, if you are in that situation, I would say getting supervision and further training on that would be really helpful. So it's not a definite no, and different therapists are going to have different comfort levels with that. But the key is always creating safety. So can I create safety in the room for this couple in order to do some of this work? But there are specialized trainings on EFT where there has been violence. There's specialized trainings on EFT with addiction. There's also really, there's good research base on EFT with same-sex couples, EFT with different cultural couples and communities. So it's a really, really wide research base and a whole bunch of different types of situations.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, thank you. For someone who does want to go through the training, what would the process, and you talked a little bit about this, but what does the process of EFT supervision look like?
So normally it's a minimum of 8 hours, and those can be either in a group setting or individual setting. And you're presenting a tape in each one of those hours and then reviewing the tape with the supervisor. And so some supervisors might want to watch sort of a chunk of tape and then give some feedback at the end. Sometimes we're sort of pausing as we go through, saying, hey, what was happening for you in this moment when you said this thing? Is there a reason you went in this direction instead of this direction? So you're really sort of slowing down the work that you've done with a couple and getting that feedback on it. Videos can help too, in terms of, you might see one of the partners turn away. And so the supervisor might ask, okay, did you notice that? Or what meaning did you make from that? What do you think it might have been like if you'd encouraged them to turn towards their partner? We're sort of trying to look at the experience of the couple and the approach of the therapist, and trying to explore ways to really further enhance those skills.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So I'm not seeing any more questions coming through, Rosa. So did you have any final concluding thoughts that you wanted to note before we finish for this morning?
I don't think so. And like I said, I was trying to find the right amount of material to cover in an hour and 15. So I think I went a little bit shorter rather than a little bit too long. I wanted to just, I guess, let people know that I am offering group and individual supervision here in the province if it's something that you're interested in. So if you do want to reach out to me to discuss that at all, certainly you can, and my email address is here. And if there's anything that comes up for anyone from this that they're interested in learning more about, I'm certainly open to having discussions about EFT. I am hoping to try and there are a number of EFT practitioners here in the province, and I'd like to try and continue to grow that community here, because I think that that's really valuable for us as therapists to have a community that we can go to, and also for clients to have a number of people that they can refer to as well.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So I just want to take a moment to echo some of the comments that are coming in through the chat, noting, Rosa, that it was an excellent presentation, great presentation, very informative. So that feedback is coming in as well. So I just wanted to note that. And I really do want to thank you, Rosa, for facilitating this webinar for us today, and for sharing your experience, expertise, and knowledge in the area of EFT. And you covered so much important information, and we really hope this webinar sparked everyone's interest in EFT and how it might be useful to them in their practice, and maybe want to go on and further their training and education in EFT. So thank you again, Rosa, for taking the time from your busy schedule. You're working full time, you're in private practice, and you're doing these sessions for your social colleagues. So I just wanted to note how truly appreciated we are that you're able to join us this morning to do this webinar. So thank you. A question did come in around CPE credits. So I just want to note that RSWs may claim 1.5 CPE credits for attending this webinar as per the NLCSW CPE policy. And as you begin to sign off, we do ask that you complete the evaluation that will appear. Your feedback is always so important in terms of future planning for CPE sessions. And on that note, I just want to say thanks again to Rosa. Thanks again to everyone for attending, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Annette.